RV sir for the BSc Media Alumni Association, a series of program we are conducting. Today's session is going to be taken care by our beloved alumnus. So introduction is Mr. Vishant is going to give introduction now. Mr. Vishant, please take it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. An exuberant evening to one and all present here. I am very much privileged to give an introduction about our esteemed guest, Mr. C. Surya Prakash, who is qualified with PhD, BE Mechanical Engineering, MBA, PG Diploma in Business Administration, PG Diploma in Higher Education, MPhil, MA in Applied Psychology, BTA, CTA, and TSTA. So currently, he works as a professor of organizational behavior at the Janssen Schools of Business, Coimbatore, and has an international accreditation as teaching and supervising transaction analyst. He is a master practitioner in neuro-linguistic programming and has over 2 decades of experience in teaching, research, facilitation, and industrial training and consultancy. He was the chair of Training and Certification Council of Transaction Analysts and vice president of operations from 2007 to 9, vice president in research and innovation 2010 to 12, and president of the International Transaction Analysis Association from 2015 to 17, and is currently the secretary and trustee of the SATA, which is the South Asian Association of Transaction Analysts. Mr. Surya has received the Muriel James Living Principles Award of the ITAA in the year 2013 for a significant contribution to the advancement of transaction analysis by personal example and contributions of an exceptional and lasting nature. Mr. Surya has done his counseling course BTA with Institute for Counseling and Transaction Analysis, Cochin. He has over 10 years experience in counseling and coaching at Asha Counseling and Training Services and in organizational counseling and coaching through Relation Institute of Development. Mr. Surya is the co-director of Relation Institute of Development, providing organizational development training and coaching services. He has trained a lot of managers, executives, factory employees, teachers, students, social workers, and parents using TA and allied models. His specialty is in organizational development, with TA includes creating awareness, team building, problem solving, conflict resolution, group dynamics, communication, and motivation. In 2008, he designed and since then has been offering courses on developmental transaction analysis for organizations in various places like Coimbatore, Bangalore, Mumbai, and Delhi, preparing organizational trainers, consultants, coaches, and counselors to appear for the international certification as transaction analysts. This is actually the first of its kind in India. He regularly presents workshops and papers in national and international conferences. He is very much passionate about radical transformational leadership and Vedantic studies on Dharma for personal and social transformation by embodying universal values of full potential and integrity. He recently launched Child First Society, an NGO to build a caring and thriving society that places the child first in all actions that affect the future of our lives and the planet. Also, he is an avid long-distance runner and the organizer of TED, and his interests are reading, cooking, traveling, and trekking. Sir, on behalf of all, I welcome you, sir. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Nishant. Vanakkam. Good evening to everybody. At the outset, thanks to Shankar, Karthik, and the whole team who made it possible, and for me to be here today. And when Karthik asked me to give a talk and ask for the topic, I was wondering what, and the first thing that came to my mind is this theme, rehumanizing workplaces. Actually, that is the motto of our consultancy firm Relations as well. So today I thought I will share with you some of my thoughts about on this theme, which has evolved over the last 20-25 years. As you heard Nishant talk about me, I wear several hats as a counselor, coach, and so on. But one thing which is common, across all these roles is me as a transaction analyst. Some of you who might not be familiar with that, transaction analysis is a field of psychology. which basically finds application in any helping areas or human relations related areas like counseling, psychotherapy, education, and organizational development as well. So that is how I got introduced to transaction analysis as soon as I finished my MBA, just before I was completing my MBA in 94. So ever since I went on to study it deeper and deeper, and then I, of course, started my own consultancy and training practice, and then went on to learn counseling and coaching, and transaction analysis has been part of all these processes all through. So when I was working with organizations since 95, and immediately after this liberalization started, and most of our clients were MSMEs in Tirupur and Coimbatore and so on. Since then, I've been looking at one particular aspect, that is the role of people and how people are being treated. And the fallout of that is over the last 10 years or so, somehow my own philosophy about people and work also evolved and crystallized. And when Karthik asked, I thought, okay, let me share my thoughts on this subject, which I'm sure is also going to be crucial for the next, at least, immediately, at least for a few years in the scenario of this COVID and the Corona crisis, the uncertainty, and all these elements. So what I thought I will share today with you is my understanding of the role of people in the workplace and what is missing in terms of how people are being treated in the workplace. And I thought I would share one key principle which has helped me to support, help, and guide many of my trainees, supervisors, coaches in managing their own people in their workplaces. So I have a short presentation. I thought I will make the presentation for about 15-20 minutes or so, and then the floor can be thrown open for your comments, feedback, questions, and so on. I'm going to share the screen. Is it possible? I suppose so.
Yes, sir, you can.
Yes, just look at.
Yes, sir, we are able to see.
Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. All right. So one of the things is the fallout of industrialization and the market economy has been that we have somehow forgotten the very fundamental premise of our any constitution, for that matter, that we are of the people, by the people, and for the people. So over the years, I'm not going to expand on this because all of us have seen how the whole aspect, the role of people in the workplace has drastically changed and if not diminished over the centuries, and definitely over the last few decades or so. So for example, quickly, if you were to look at the context in which we are talking about this, when people were just hunter-gatherers, then there was no differentiation between work and life per se. But then slowly when we settled down and then we became agrarian, then we found work was an integral part of life, not too divorced from normal life. But later on, when industrialization, other things came up, the whole idea of factory and other things came up in the last couple of centuries or so, we have seen work was forcefully divorced from life per se. So, and over the last century, we have seen how we have totally forgotten that work and industry and economy was built by people to support people. And finally, we are seeing scenarios where people are being compromised and people's interests are being compromised for the sake of keeping the numbers rolling and for keeping the economy going and so on. I was shocked actually today morning when I saw the newspaper, the headlines about how the whole labor laws are being abrogated in some of the states, at least for the next 3 years. That is a telling tale of the significance that we are ascribing to people at work. Definitely the political scenario wouldn't have worked unless there was pressure from the industries actually. So as businesses, I shudder at times when you look at the pace and the direction which we are going in terms of why are we doing all this if people are not going to be happy. Anyway, that is a topic for another place. So when I started thinking about these elements, one thing that came up to me was, okay, somehow the workplace has dehumanized. So what can we do in order to rehumanize it? So the first thing we have to see is what is missing in this whole canvas. So that is where my first thoughts into this came in. And of course, all of us must be familiar with the famous Einstein's quote, the world we have made as a result of the level of thinking we have done thus far creates problems that we cannot solve at the same level at which we have created them. We shall require a substantially new manner of thinking if humankind is to survive. So this has been haunting me for quite some time, and actually this is one of the main reasons behind me even initiating this NGO that Nishant was talking about, the Child First Society, as to what can we do in order to create some fundamental changes in society. So as we're thinking in the context of work and people at work, one framework which I extensively use in my training and also in my coaching and counseling and consultancy work is what I would like to share with you. It's a very simple framework, which is highly proven framework, adopted by Dr. Monica Sharma, who was the director of the UNDP for several decades. And I found quite versatile, could be adopted in any business context, either small or big. And this gave me a framework to look at how we could approach people and people-related issues at the workplace as well. So what this model primarily starts with is, whenever there is a problem, any business problem or personal problem, whatever social problem, we start with partial solutions. For example, often we go for immediate technical solutions that we want. Say, for example, when there is a recession and the industries are going low, one of the immediate thing that industries do is, okay, let's cut cost. And what is the immediate way to cut cost? Okay, let's cut labor. Okay, so that is a technical solution, which is necessary, which is to be done. But we all know that it's only partial in the sense it is short term. It's not going to sustain because we can't keep cutting. At some stage, we have to get back, we have to grow and so on. So the next level of solution we look for is systemic and structure-based solutions. Like we look at, okay, let us have a long-term, strategy for, manpower planning and so on. Absolutely fine. That is also necessary. But we all know such strategies and systems alone won't work unless we have people on the ground doing things. Okay. All right. Even if we have solutions which provide their relevant system and also the immediate technical solution, for example, okay, we lay off some people and then we have a long, a medium-term plan for manpower and so on, along commensurate with our business plans. Still, we find this solution is partial. Unfortunately, most businesses, or even at the national level, most governments do not see this as a partial solution. We pretend to be the final solution and the lasting solution, because we often forget an important aspect about human life. What is the value base on which we are building all this? We have conveniently forget and ignore that element. Or worse, often we talk about values which are totally divorced from what the reality is down the line. That is also possible. Like often we talk about empowerment, but down the line when you go and talk to people, they say, why don't you provide this, all this training and other things to our bosses? Because actually it doesn't transfer into the structures and systems of the organization. So eventually, finally, it doesn't trickle down to the frontline employee who doesn't feel empowered. But we see, all the value statements, mission slogans written down all over the place with posters and so on and so forth. So these solutions, which we often find at workplace, are partial solutions. So the question, therefore, is what would be a total or complete solution? Anything that we do, anything that we find, need to transcend all these three domains. We need technical solutions bolstered by systems and structures, which is primarily grounded and based on universal values, whatever the values that we stand for. Okay, so if we could come up with solutions which include and incorporate all these three levels, then we find these solutions would be sustainable. So it is the same works for people related issues also. Take, for example, this whole ordinance of abrogating all labor laws for 3 years. I just couldn't put my finger on to what are we trying to achieve by doing this? What are the values we are propagating? And how is it going to affect the whole system and structures of the whole industry and economy? Just because it immediately gives some relief to the entrepreneurs and the businessmen in setting up new businesses or reducing their cost or whatever. Keeping in, so this is exactly what we are focusing on. I'm aware, and I know absolutely as much as all of you know, that there are no easy solutions. But the thing is, are we even thinking of this? Are we even considering that the decisions that we take need to be based on some universal values which should be equitable and just to everybody concerned? Definitely to the last man in the, or last woman in the hierarchy. So therefore the question is, what is the missing piece? So the next few minutes I would like to share on this, and I also invite you to reflect on a few aspects of how could we do this? How could we bring back people to the center of industry and economy? So the missing piece, as we all know by now, is we are great in strategy and building structures. We are great in finding technical solutions, even if you take the whole way the health industry is working and so on. But what is missing is the outer circle that we saw earlier. That is the value base on which we could do it. Because in fact, nowadays it's become almost a little awkward to talk about values. People, consider and look at as a little, abnormal if you talk of values, as if it is not in the domain of something in the domain of industry or governance or business and so on. So, but actually that is the missing piece, which is making anything that we do non-sustainable and unjust and not fair as well. In transaction analysis, this is where I derive inspiration from. There is a concept called physis. In fact, it's one of the most least developed idea in transaction analysis, but I find this is the crux and the core of what we all people do and what we all people live by and so on. Physis is not a very common term that all of us are familiar with. So actually, it is a very old, age-old term in Greek mythology, in theology, and philosophy, and it is also a scientific term in those ancient periods. Usually translated in English as nature. Nature, not in the sense of trees and material, but it's more like nature of somebody, nature of something. What is the true nature of something? That is what physis basically means. The closest way we could define it is change or growth which comes from the spirit within the person, and that is what physis is. In other words, it is also called as the essence of life. Or Eric Berne, who is the founder of transaction analysis, he said it's a force of nature which eternally strives to make things grow and to make growing things more perfect. So that is what physis, something in us wants us constantly to grow and also to perfect our own selves. So as a verb, it means to grow or to be, or what things really are. Fundamentally, what is the ultimate nature of me? What defines me? And that is what physis is. Why we talk about it in transaction analysis? Because that is what the ground or the foundation on which our personality is built. Personality is only the manifest part of us, but it is built on, not from thin air. It is built on this physis, the very nature. If you were to give a metaphor, it's like when you throw a seed onto the soil, even if it is buried deep down, what makes it sprout and come out? That is physis. That is something innate in it, which defines what it is. That is what physis is. So if you look at it closely, the closest thing that I could think of in our Eastern philosophy is the notion of dharma. Dharma, of course, has varied connotations and meanings and levels, right from simple duty to ethics. But I'm talking about dharma in the sense of the fundamental nature of things. So that is what physis is. So if only as a species or as a collective or as individuals, either in our private roles or in our organization's roles, we could get in touch with our physis whenever we are making any decisions which affect not only our lives but others, then we would definitely not do several things that we are doing today as we do in terms of business. Because we are going to hear continuously for several months of how organizations are going to lay off people. Of course, people may question, I'm not saying you shouldn't lay off. What I'm saying is that it's not the what, it's more to do with the how part of it that defines how humanized the workplace is. I will later share a couple of examples from my coaching practice as to how this could be done. So this is what Erikman says about physis, and that is what I would invite us to reflect on. It is some force which drives people to grow, progress, and do better. Religious people might say it was the soul, and scientists have no answer at present. But it helps to suppose that there is a system of tensions which normally pushes living things continually in the direction of progress. We may suppose the existence of such a system in order to explain why people grow and why the human race tries to get better, and why animals gradually become more venturesome through evolution, and why a creative love of beauty is added to the mind. We can forget the question of whose benefit this is for and still suppose that there is a force within us which keeps us striving to go onward and upward. So how often are we in touch with physis? That is a question which I'm struggling with for the last, at least for the last 10 years. And I'm building to integrate this as part of all my practices in my training, coaching, counseling, consultancy, and so on, primarily to help people get in touch with their physis at some level or the other. We are not talking about somebody staying in their physis all the time, but can I tap into it? Because we also see that is the inner wisdom that all of us have. If only I could tap into that wisdom source consciously, then I would make decisions which will be in the best interest of me and people around. So this is something I want to pose to all of you. The first question, because many times people ask, how do I know what my physis is? How do I know what values I stand for? The first question I would like you to reflect for a minute. What is the quality or qualities do you value the most in your life? I'm going to, sorry. Stop sharing for a moment, and I would invite you to maybe type out your responses in the chat, please. What is the one thing that you value the most in life? maybe take a minute to reflect on integrity. Beautiful. Sumesh says integrity. Karthik says ethics. Karthik, I would invite you to think a little deeper into what sort of values guide your ethical thinking. Kanagraj says trust. Shankar says living that moment. Shankar Narayan. Anantalakshmi says go back home after a good day's work and sleep peacefully. Okay, peace. Raji says freedom. Vijay says attitude. Nishant says integrity and honesty. Pratibha says relationship and moral values. Rupak says humanity. Vanishi says integrity. Raghuram says love. Manikandan says coexist. Nishant says perseverance. Beautiful. So that's beautiful responses. I know there will be some more. Quality of life and value system. Sri Devi says, beautiful. Keep it coming. I would like to pose the next question to you to reflect on. What do you deeply care about? What do you deeply care about in life? I know it's a quite an abstract question, but I'm sure all of us have our own answers to this. So what do you deeply care about? What moves you when you wake up? Live and let live. Manikandan says disrespect to Mother Earth. Vijay says perfection. Sri Devi says thoughts and emotional value. Nishant says peace of mind. Rupak says being joyful. These are values or something that moves you, deeply care about. Okay, Shankar Narayan cares about humanity. Ananta Krishnan deeply cared about nature. Beautiful. Are you waiting some more responses? Vani says people. Raji says children. Sumesh says environment. Karthik says myself. Rupak says well-being. Yeah. Nishant, keeping myself healthy. Okay, mentally and physically. Health. All right. Excellent. Thank you for those quick responses. So there is something that we deeply stand for, and there is something where we deeply care about. So the next question, which is the key question here, is if I could channelize into stand and grounded in my, when I'm grounded in my values and I focus my energy onto whatever deeply moves me or something that I deeply care about, what do I do about it? How could I transform that into rehumanizing my workplace? In other words, how would that guide me to put people first at my work? So that is a question I want to leave you with. And I want to share a couple of examples of how people do it at different levels in organizations. Okay, I see some responses to this. Empathy. Sumesh says empathy. Yes, you could empathize with your colleagues. I suppose that is what you mean. Rupak says bring about mindfulness in everything we do. Okay. Teamwork. All right. Yes. With colleagues. Suganya says. Nishant says helping each other and seeing the positives as a person and avoid negativity. Being gratitudeous, okay. Sridevi says encouraging each other. Vijay says understanding and listening to them. Beautiful. Thank you for all those responses immediately. I know there is not much time for you to think about it, but your responses say your degree of reflection and introspection of your own self. So if you look at this, whatever we did in the last few minutes, Nishant says avoid politics. Okay, absolutely. Manoharan says leadership. All right. So if you look at whatever we did in the last few minutes, it's just a few minutes that we have focused on. And we found how the best of us comes out in the scenario. And what made the difference is we tapping into our basic values, which is all grounded in humanity. Then our decisions would be people-oriented, which will of course vary from context to context. As I said, I'll just close with a couple of examples, and then we will open up for comments and questions and so on. One is one of my coachee, he heads the HR functions in a startup in Bangalore. And just 2 weeks back, because of this extended lockdown, being a startup, and they grew very quickly over the last year or so, they had to lay off almost 30% of their workforce. In a week's time, he had to lay off 170 people. He was heartbroken. See, I think that is where the grounding in the universal values comes. I've also heard of people, I'm sure many of you would have seen people who cold-heartedly fire people through an email. That is also possible. But this guy was heartbroken, but he did his job. He went ahead and laid off because in the interest of the organization, he had to do that. But over the last 2 weeks, he has been working through his networks to find alternate placement for these people. And just yesterday or day before, he was telling me how almost around 30% of whoever was fired were assured or guaranteed of some offer or the other as soon as this lockdown is lifted and so on. It was not expected of him, but still he went ahead and did that. Of course, with the support of the management, his leadership and so on, in an informal manner. And that is exactly what I'm referring to, our decisions and actions being grounded in universal values. Of course, this is our extraordinary conditions. I know this example could be a little dramatic, but I also share about something very mundane on a day-to-day basis. One of the leader, who was a coachee again in another organization in Mumbai, he found somehow his team could do better. And we all know of this famous Harvard business, Harvard study, which says people don't lead organizations, they leave their bosses. So he wanted to make sure that his people are happy with him and they wouldn't leave. So after their vision statement and so on, they found one of the priority of people is to retain talent of the organization. So what he did was he developed a program where every month he spends an hour once a month with his direct reportees, not talking about business, not talking about target, primarily talking about what is it that you expect from me as a boss and how do you feel about me as your manager. That is all it is. The agenda is just these two. What are your expectations and how do you feel about me? An open discussion. That's all he does with all his direct reports once a month. And you wouldn't believe in 3 months' time, he found almost 80% of his direct reportees started doing this with their own immediate direct reportees. And in about 6 months to 9 months, he came back and he was reporting about how he could see a change in his whole work environment, culture, and so on. That is again an example of how a solution could be complete and whole and not partial, which finds a direct technical solution. He put in place a system, somehow it evolved into a system, and then which was grounded basically in the universal values that he stood for. Okay, so many times we have a question when you talk of values, or is it possible in these days where values are eroded or values are dead and so on? There are umpteen number of examples that we could look at, if only we could look around. that is something that I'm quite convinced of, and I'm quite pleased to share that with you all today. And I think with that I will stop, because I know there's a lot of time that I've taken, and open to you for questions or comments or any feedback, please.
Thank you, Surya. Even though you have long to share with us, hello, we curtailed here. And anyway, we hope actually in Q&A we'll be compensating that. Now we will invite Mr. S.M. Shankar to have a few words on about the session.
Thank you, Karthik. It's, I think, an amazing session we had today. Thank you, Surya. You've done a great job.
My pleasure.
And I could add some few things here, because
Please do.
Because it's your lecture goes more on being a human, being compassionate, and also having certain value systems. In fact, I was talking to Dr. R.V. sir about this. We always read about Western philosophy, but somehow or the other, when we move towards 45, 50, we always tend to be more learning about our Indian philosophy.
Yeah.
So why not just begin at the very early stage? That is one thing.
Yes.
Tanninji poyyerka, that is what in Tamil we say.
Yeah.
Are we true to our heart? Are we
Yes.
listening to our heart? I think that is what your whole content goes about.
Yes.
And when I met His Holiness Dalai Lama, he was talking about two things. One, do what you are passionate about. When we deal with others, be compassionate. Okay. So this can happen in all walks, not only treating
Yes.
with your, your subordinates or colleagues, also with your suppliers, your customers, being ethical, family, everything that goes on. I think you have touched a wonderful topic, and we need more such discussion. That's what you're triggering, Surya, actually.
Actually, that was
Yeah.
the objective of this, because this is something we don't talk about.
Exactly. And I think
We
Dr.
shy
R.V.
away.
sir is, I've been always pestering him to get into such a kind of discussions, to lead us all. He's been a mentor to us.
Yeah.
And it will be a great opportunity if you all can come around, think about solutions, because there's a lot of problems for small industries, not only that, we don't have a solution. Just reading a Western philosophy in a business school, and if you expect somebody to perform in an environment which is totally different, how can you be unethical or inhumane? When you're dealing with, such a wonderful culture we've been brought up.
Yes.
You have nailed it, Mr. Surya. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to catch you separately. Okay, thank you again. Bye-bye. See you. Yeah.
Thank you for
that. Yes, sir. Thank you. And next we have our past director, Dr. R. Venkatapati sir. Sir.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Surya, you made a wonderful disposition on how things could have been nice. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. Had Father Kandathil and Sister Annie would have survived, they would have really be jubilant to know that there is a person who could take off and flying high on transaction analysis. It's a wonderful thing to cherish.
Thank you, sir.
Maybe when Shankar has given me some lead, yes. We always have this problem of cultural differentiation, and sometimes we talk, sometimes we omit. I just take 2 minutes. I'm not asking any question. I'm only just sharing some concern. See, when we talk about the other culture has met with 2 world wars, and everything depended on the 2 world wars and the outcome of the 2 world wars and the sufferings. Fortunately or unfortunately, we have the Mohammedan kings, the Muslim kings who invaded us, and we have a different proposition. Taking all these things into account, we have 2 prominent qualities. One is permissiveness and the other one is hypocrisy. Permissiveness says, as long as nobody touched you, even from us, Enron followed and many other corporates have followed. As long as you are not noticed, you are get caught. keep going. This is one value system. The other one is the hypocrisy, that is, I am always, 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 always. And where are we going to budge this and make this happen? Because as you rightly touched upon this COVID-19 and also the sufferings of people and how are they going to come up, is this the right time that we should, both the sectors should change? Because one thing that you said, I am also very keen on that. The Industrial Relations Act remains. The constituents of industrial relations is completely changed. Now, whether we are going to follow the act or the changed version of somebody's prescription. People say work 12 hours and get this. And how many organizations, as you rightly pointed out, give back to workers, people? So these are all concerns that really bothers us. But beyond all these things, one good thing is, nice to hear how transaction analysis has gone deep into you and the way you have been talking about, nice. I feel that maybe I could even say that in you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. It means a lot to hear from you.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Next, can we have Shankar Narayanan, sir?
Oh, Shankar Narayanan, sir.
இல்ல சார்லாம் இல்லைங்க.
Oh, okay.
Not
உங்க
our
junior-
Shankar Narayanan. Yes.
இல்ல, உங்க-
Oh,
Shankar
okay,
Narayanan.
நான் Professor Shankar Narayanan.
உங்க ஜூனியர் தான் சார் 95-97 பேட்ச்ல இருந்து.
Oh, okay, okay.
I'm just curious. I have one doubt and probably a question also. This may not be related to your presentation. It's just out of the box. நேத்து கேட்கணும்னு நினைச்சேன், but நேத்து I knew that you are coming today, so I wanted to ask. Usually people keep the mirror in front of them for them to see the reflections. உங்களுக்கு தலைக்கு பின்னாடி ஒரு மிரர் இருக்கு, எதுக்கு அப்படின்னு கேட்கலாமா? Thank you.
Actually, that is my study desk.
Okay.
For the lighting purposes, Gaga, I'm sitting the other way around.
Oh, okay. Then it's fine. Thank you.
All right. Keen observation. Thank you, Shankar.
Sir, next we have Nishant. Nishant தான் சார் எனக்கு ஏன் ஏஜ்ல இருக்காரு, மத்தவங்க எல்லாருமே எனக்கு சீனியருங்கிறதுனால மத்தவங்க எல்லாருமே சார் தான். Nishant.
Sir, good evening. Sir, Surya Prakash, sir, good evening. Sir, presentation was very good, sir.
Good evening,
Even,
Nishant.
it was simple and it was very neat. I believe in also that values what you said. So I have a doubt regarding that, sir. இப்போ நீங்க ஒர்க் பிளேஸ்ல சொன்னீங்க, ஒர்க் பிளேஸ்ல வந்து I work as a teacher. If I strongly believe in developing each and every student and giving a lot of positive energy. ஆனா ஒர்க் பிளேஸ்ல நம்ம பாசிட்டிவே ஃபுல்லா கொடுத்தாலும் many of them don't like that. அப்போ how do you handle to make the workplace happier ன்னு சொன்னீங்க நீங்க. அவங்களால எப்படி ஹேண்டில் பண்றது? நம்ம சேராமலும் இருக்க முடியாது, சேர்ந்து இருக்க முடியாது. அதுல பத்தி கொஞ்சம் if you can illustrate.
I just want to make something clear. I don't know if I said it, but I don't believe that we should keep people happy all the time. At least not all the time. Even if students or workplace, we cannot keep people happy all the time. Primarily because others' happiness is not in our hands. You can give everything, the whole world to somebody and still they may not be happy. So we can't take that sort of a responsibility. That is not what I meant. What I said was, as a teacher, of course, we belong to the same fraternity. We need to be tough with people, with students especially, many times. We need to be firm with people. But we don't have to be rude. We don't have to be mean. Actually, I will be firm with somebody only when I'm grounded in my values. Say, for example, I strongly believe in realizing someone's full potential and also being with integrity. When somebody has not done a good job and I'm not going to say it on his face, then I'm not being in integrity. So when I'm really grounded in my values, I would do what I meant to do, but I will do it in a way which does not demean the other person. I also have to uphold the dignity of the other person. All of us, I'm sure, would have experienced Venkatapati sir. He calls a spade a spade. I still remember 25 years back. ப்ராஜெக்ட் ரிப்போர்ட் சரியில்லை அப்படின்னு சொன்னா எடுத்துட்டு போ அப்படின்றவாரு. But he never, compromises on or puts down the dignity of the other person. He never makes you feel small or insulted. And that is exactly what I mean. I can be firm, I can be ruthless at times actually with my students, but never ever make them feel small. That is what I meant. And I always tell my students also, even my clients, I tell them, my job is not to keep you happy. Because everybody will be happy where they are. When everybody is just happy with where they are, then there is no growth, there is no development. So I hope I answered your question. I don't know.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So please don't be goody-goody. If that is what, I'm sorry if that is what the impression that you gave. That is not what I'm meaning at all. As I said, you can fire people. Like yesterday, Srini was talking about. I don't know if you were there at Srini's talk. I was quite inspired by what he said, and I was so happy that his talk happened just the day before mine. Were you there yesterday's talk, Nishant?
No, sir, I was not there, sir.
Oh, you were not there. He talked about how he fired somebody. He did not select somebody who came for an interview, and that guy, after some years, referred his organization to an organization, saying, even though you did not select me, the way you made me understand why you didn't select me, I got a sense of how you treat your people. And that was good enough for me to believe that what sort of an organization you are. And that is important. We don't have to be nice to everybody, but we can always be respectful and dignified with everybody. Thank you for that question, Nishant.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Next we have Mr. Rupak online. Sir.
Sir. Yeah, thank you very much. Sir, Suryaprakash sir, thank you very much. I think today's topic that you covered was very close to my heart, and I was very happy to see somebody talking about the subject. This has been very close to my heart, and I've been following that in my corporate life in the last 20 plus years. Just recently, I'm out of the corporate world, and I'm also able to realize that it really works. What you said really has a power in it. I'm a person who have experienced it, with my own team. So being in the mid-managerial and senior managerial positions over the last several years, one of the main challenges that we face at that stage is to get the idea across to everyone. So everybody is not on the same page. So initially, when I started doing this approach, my team was taken back, because they never expected such things in a corporate, actually in a private corporate world. And when they started to feel that over a period of years, they got used to it so much that there was a lot more, cohesive working nature. So there's a lot more, bringing the whole oneself to the workplace. Otherwise, you come in just for the physical, the actual transactional part of the work. But when you actually experience that wholeness and complete, belonging, a sense of belonging is created within your team, even if it's within your just immediate private team. That kind of creates a lot more energy, and which kind of can percolate to other teams. But several times I've tried to push this in through to other managers or to the HR, because if this idea comes through from a larger leadership level downwards, then a larger benefit can happen to the organization, because everybody looks at the organizational values and try to align what like if I have my universal values that you spoke about is aligned with that of the corporate or the organization's value, institute's value, then there's a lot more urge and drive for me to work and to bring in that achievement. A lot of unfortunately, sad to say that a lot of leaders do not accept this, and the HR, who are, as the word says, human resources, have missed out that human word in their thing. So that's a sad state which I just wanted to share.
Absolutely, you really nailed it. It's not an easy task, and as you said, the word HR itself, I actually don't approve of this word HR, because the moment you treat humans as a resource, then it means it is using them as a means towards some end. But I would say, eventually organization, the people need to be the end in itself. Of course, they produce and stuff like that. So that is one. Second aspect which I wanted to say is, somebody asked the same thing. He said, he was discussing about this topic this afternoon, a friend of mine said, இதெல்லாம் இந்த காலத்துல நடக்குமா, இதெல்லாம் ஒத்து வருமா? Now that was his immediate response. நீ என்ன உலகத்தையே மாத்திர முடியுமா? And I said, no, I was feeling the same way as you were. I told him, look, I'm not here to create waves. I don't have any illusion of creating waves, but I can create my own small ripples.
Yep, that's
and
true.
that is good enough. I'm so glad to hear your story, Rupa.
Absolutely,
Thank
sir.
you
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have Vanishri here for her next question. Vanishri, over to you, please.
Hi, Vani.
Hello. Hi, Surya.
Hi, Vani.
Hi, hi.
Good
Thank you
to
so
see you.
much. Thank you so much for the wonderful session, and thank you for inducting me into transaction analysis, for being my guru in TA and bringing the whole world of psychology open.
Such a pleasure to see you today, Vani.
Thank you so much, Surya. Surya, basically being in HR for the last 20 years, being in industry, especially from manufacturing industry, we have come across a lot many occasions where it's been very difficult to strike a balance between the employee's interests and the management interests. However, one area where the management had and see, we do not have different options, but rather let go of certain employees after exploring all possibilities. I personally believe in tapping the potential of the individual, giving him multiple choices and all of that. And with whatever limited the borders defined and boundaries within which we play. After exploring all possibilities, when we let go of individuals, though, what I mean from TA parlance, the adult is fully convinced. Yes, this is the only way out. But when we really sit in front of that individual and have that conversation, and when the individual comes out as a person and not as a title or not as a job holder, not as a designation, and they talk about the commitment spending, they talk about children and all of that, it really creates a lot of pain from within. And that's I think a nightmare which we as HR professionals, most of us with a conscience have to deal with. And there is a conflict. Though we are convinced that this is the option, there is always an internal conflict which goes on. Am I doing the right thing? Is this the best possible way out? And it's practically very difficult to go back to management and keep speaking only on behalf of the employees. Though we try to create systems as HR leaders, we have systems in place, we've given options, we do coaching, we do counseling and all of that. But still, I mean, I don't know how do we deal with this kind of a dilemma in being a HR professional.
Okay, I don't know if I have an answer to that.
Right,
but one thing I would like to say is, yes, it is not an easy job.
Right.
The key, the operational word in what you said is, any HR with some conscience will feel all this. Sure. That means you are human. Okay, that means you are in touch with your values. And we all know when somebody is hurt, that is compassion that comes out. So naturally, when you are compassionate, seeing somebody in pain, you would definitely feel the pain. Pain is inevitable. When there is hurt, there will be pain. The question is how deep I am grounded in my values so that I see the larger good of the decision that I'm making.
True, Surya.
And if I'm going to just fire the fellow the next morning just because he didn't get to the whatever rating, then naturally that's a different story. But you have gone through a whole process. Right? So that is what we are talking about. That as a system and your decision is based on the values of the organization and so on. True. So that is the key. So therefore, of course, that's another, maybe that will a whole new area, another session, maybe. We're talking about often as persons, as individuals, we get into role confusion actually. And role contamination, we call it. Where our private roles and organizational roles really intrude into each other. That is the cause for this dilemma and the struggle that we are going through.
Okay.
So if we could realign those boundaries, then I think this would be, it will never be easy, but definitely it will minimize the pain. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Surya.
Welcome, Vani.
Thank
Nice
you,
to
Dr.
hear you.
Surya.
Thank you.
That was a very, very good session, very interactive. I should say one of the most interactive session. I should say. We have Mr. Raghuraman here to sum up and conclude the session. Raghu, all yours.
Thank you, Aishwarya.
Thanks, Aishwarya. Yeah, before I come to you, Surya, all of us at BSMET, probably until Padhi sir stayed in BSMET, probably the organization behavior continued to be handled by other professors. But for all of us, Venkatapati sir is our guru. Who introduced all of us to the world of organization behavior. I'm glad he's here. So personally for me, I learned not only the OB from Padhi sir, I learned how to speak simple English. When I came to BSF, but I had trouble speaking good English. But I'm glad to acknowledge and thank Professor Venkatapati for teaching not only OB but also how to speak good simple English and probably how to speak a humorous English.
Yes, I still remember his Cincinnati examples.
Yeah. So he's such a nice person. Okay, so of course, see, some of your subjects are close to your heart, like transaction analysis is also close to my heart. It is there at BSMN. I happened to attend a one-day conference about TA, and that knowledge continues to stay with me, and I tend to apply that. Thank you so much. See, there are certain, I think the certain points you touched. See, there are certain organizations whenever they are in a crisis mode due to recession or things like that. So when they had option to retrench people some 30% or 20%, and the other option was they all agreed that across the board they will take a equal pay cut, so that nobody goes out until the situation resumes. They all will suffer the problem equally. And of course, in fact, I am reminded of a very senior person called Vora. He was actually the senior vice president HR of DSQ Systems, which was going very well. In fact, they did a lot of money during the Y2K period and all that. When he was asked to retrench about close to 1,000 people, he said he put his name in the first. That's how he began the process. And recently I read a news that Airbnb, when they had to retrench about 30% of the staff, they explained like the other company did, and allowed everyone, whoever was leaving the organization, to keep their Mac computer with them, carry with them, because they needed to look for a job, and they were also assisting them to find a job. So there are a lot of organizations which are actually, I'm glad that they are actually following their values, sticking to their values, and trying to help each other even in times of moments of crisis. So with that, it was a great learning session. In fact, I happened to invite some of my friends, who did some executive MBA programs from IIMC and all for the program, because I found it very, very relevant. It should be very learning, and a special, I draw a lot of inspiration from you, not only from your academic or a professional side, but also from your, marathon or your, fitness side. You did not speak about it. Probably it's a one full day session for some other day. So that is also, pretty, inspiring, for all to keep themselves fit, along with keeping the mind and emotions fit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
If you're going to conclude, can I mark my attendance by class participation?
Wow. Yeah, go ahead, sir. Go ahead. Thank you so much on behalf of all. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Well done, Surya. To start with a couple of lighter notes, when the alumni Shankarnarayan asked you, what is that glass for? I thought you would say for 360-degree perspective. Okay. Then the other one is about the intervention on the difficulty of HR job. In Tamil ஒரு proverb உண்டு, மத்தளத்துக்கு ரெண்டு பக்கம் அடி. அதுதான் HR job. He has to talk to the management for workers, and talk to the workers, trying to convince, even if he is giving a poison pill, he has to say how sugar coated it is and how tasteful it is, etc. So unfortunately, both parties kind of start, in a sense, disliking them. So it's a very tough job, yes. And you will know that many jokes about HRD being called, எங்க கம்பெனில ERD ன்னு சொல்லிட்டு இருந்தாங்க, எம்ப்ளாயி ரிலேஷன் டிபார்ட்மெண்ட். But people will call it eat and relax department. So that's one thing. But now I'm going to the Surya's chosen a topic which is very, very appropriate for the times. But I'm pushing it one level further. And as usual, I will ask questions for which I won't have answers. So I want him to, you see, people are talking about the next few years or the next era of workplace and all that going to be totally changed. All the new skills will be necessary and things like that. Very difficult to answer this question, but what will his own assessment be? Because you are talking about artificial intelligence and ICT coming in, it may lead to some kind of the apocryphal lotus eaters who just get fed and happily sleep and dance and doing things like that. Although I don't have much of a problem with that if I get an opportunity like that. So I know it's a difficult question to answer, but what will be your assessment? People are talking about the post-capitalist egalitarian society is not too far off. What will be your take on it, given the changing nature of jobs and things like that? Surya?
Sir, நீங்களே ஆரம்பிச்சீங்க கொஸ்டினோட, எனக்கே தெரியாது. So actually I'm really wondering what the answer could be, but my thinking on this is at least, I don't know whether it is COVID happened to be there, but even earlier, last 10 years away, I was thinking somewhere we need to take a turn from this, whatever the borrowed work culture and the technological stuff that we are living on. So my take is in the next at least 10 years, somewhere we will move towards more and more, our own version of management, business, and so on. That is my take. So we might not be swept by whatever the AI and other thing that is coming. It will definitely be increasing, but I still think there will be a small number of people, at least like me and many others here, who would keep this light burning. That is my thing. As I said earlier to somebody's question, I believe in not necessarily everybody creating waves, but create our own small ripples within our span of control. So that is something I strongly believe in, sir. So if we all keep working, then I think there will be a critical mass which would act as a counterweight maybe to this whole flood of whatever new technology and other things that is going to come, which will constantly push the human aspect to the periphery. That will be there. I think I don't see that pressure will not be there. But I'm somehow, maybe you can say I'm foolishly optimistic, but somehow I'm optimistic we would be, at least in our generation, we would be able to still see some light that we all wish to see.
Surya, I just want to ask you,
yes, Vijay.
What is EA and TA, emotional intelligence and TA? What is the link between both of them?
Okay, I think there are a number of approaches to emotional intelligence, and transaction analysis is one of the ways you can build your emotional intelligence as well.
Yeah.
That's like you can use various approaches. This is one of the approaches where
both of
again the goal is
the topics somewhat similar, I think so. I have attended also emotional intelligence. Some
yes,
way that is link with this.
It's all about people.
Linked. Yeah, people. Mainly they are emotional intelligence. It is mainly they targeted about the performance based, organizational as well as individual objectives.
It's much more
transaction
than
analysis
that.
somewhat it is linked with the human behavior. Is it so?
It's much more. It's beyond that. Emotional intelligence current form is almost everything actually.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijay.
Nice talking to you.
Same here. I know.
So good. Thank you all. I think you should close. I mean,
yes,
somebody's going to close the event.
Thank
right?
you so much, Shankar. Thanks,
yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Suresh.
Thanks,
Surya, wonderful.
for
Thank
having
you,
me here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
thank you, Dr.
so
Arvi, sir. Thank you, Ramki, sir, and all the participants. Bye.
Yeah.
So nice.